Hi, Suri.
How is everybody?
Tov.
Is it just me? I don't hear anything.
It's not just you, no.
Okay.
Rabbi, we can't hear you.
But we hear Elaine and Phil.
No.
Okay. Rabbi, we can't hear you.
Does he see us?
Can our tech people do something?
Hi, we can't hear either.
Does he see us? Working on it. Okay.
Okay.
Somebody destroyed your car.
Well, he's still muted. You heard him for 2 seconds.
And fine, I'll forgive you. In God's world,
Okay.
which is where we are now,
2
this
seconds.
sanctuary is now
You said we heard him
a
for 2 seconds.
heavenly territory. Just so you know, you didn't have to present
Okay.
any passport, but I can tell you, according to Jewish law, this is now a heavenly state. So for that,
Something.
Now we can't hear him again.
Hold on, we are trying to do something to change the sound. Hold on.
Okay. Now we can hear him. Oh, now he's silent again.
a human being.
There we go.
Have to pay.
him. Not us, it's him, it's him.
Rabbi, we do
He
not hear
doesn't
you.
hear you, he won't hear you. Take your breath.
Infinite, because every time we say, I'm sorry, God gives you everything back.
Now we can hear
And
him.
it's a rebirth. When you do a real tshuva, it's a real birth. And the rabbis tell us, all the red spots on our shirt totally disappear. Our sins totally disappear. Not only they disappear, that's only in God's world. Not only do they not disappear, but if you are sincerely apologizing, they become actually credit. So not only is it negative, now whatever you spent $100,000. Now not only do you get the $100,000 back and you don't owe it, but those $100,000 in debit become credit. That's wonderful. That's where we are now in the on the Jewish calendar. It's that moment. And it's incredible that of all moments in Jewish history, people show up to Yom Kippur. It doesn't matter. But Yom Kippur, there's something about it. And later on, we'll talk about why the Jewish people is still, as a nation, or are still as people, special. And I'm going to leave you with this question now, that we will try to answer later on. The world this past year and a half, has gone through something that nobody has any reference to. It's a new thing. How are we preparing ourselves to say Avinu Malkeinu at the end of this service? Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, to still think that we're somehow special as a Jewish people. The whole world has gone through the same experience. Kids all over the world staying home from school. It's incredible, the psyche of kids growing up like this. I think it's an amazing, I don't know the effect, but that's going to be. But that experience, everybody shared it. Why are we special? Why we're going to say Avinu Malkeinu, the King in heaven, is actually our Father. How can we still say it? Are we still special? We'll try to answer that a little later. But now I want to introduce again, or reintroduce our cantor, Phil Billitt, who came today from the city. And we're looking forward to having them actually tomorrow night. We begin this evening with a prayer book on page 397. And now that I'll read the page number, I'll wait a second before. Okay, page 397 on the bottom. Life is sown for the righteous, joy for the upright in heart.
Or zaru al tzadik uli yishrei lev simcha.
You ready for the Kol Nidre service on page 398? Please rise as we open. The social distancing. I'll hold one Torah, and the two other Torahs are just going to stay in the. 398.
בישיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
Read it in English together on page 399. By the authority of the heavenly court and the authority of the successor court, we divine consent and the consent of the congregation, we hereby declare it permissible for the grave of those who have transgressed.
כל נדרי ועשרי בחמר רמי בקונמי וכינוסי ושבועות Jair darna o Jair tevana o Jacharimena Vadi asarna V'ji asarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh shavar ad yom kippurim zeh abba Yehon Sharon Sheviki Betelin Omerutzalim La Shemirin Vela Kayamin Nidrana La Nidrei Ve'esarana La Esarei Oshevuatana Oshevuatana La Shevuot.
The second time, let's read it in English all together. All vows, oaths, and promises we made to God and are not able to from the last Yom Kippur to this Yom Kippur. We may also make vows between ourselves and God even more. Those not reconsider oaths, and he promises not to reconsider promises.
Or nidrei ve'esarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chiruyei v'kinusei u'she'u Dein darna Ude ishtevana Ude acharimna V'ji asarna V'ji asarna Al nafshatana Yom Kippurim zeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Olehom Icharat Nadehon Koron Yehon Sharam Shaviti Beterin Omeputahalin La Shemirin Vela Kayamin Idrana Lo Nidrei Ve'esarana La Esarei Oshevuatana Oshevuatana La Shevut
Page 400.
ונשלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה זלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת על העם הזה מצרים ביד הנה ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כבדבריך ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Please remain standing for one more minute. We begin the service with Baruchu on page 408.
Adonai, Hamevorach, Le'olam,
Faith are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, whose word brings the dust of everything. Your wisdom opens the gates of dawn. Your understanding regulates time and seasons. The stars above follow their appointed rounds in response to your divine will. You create day and night, ordain darkness and light. You remove the day and bring on the night. You separate one from the other. We call you Lord, Jesus. You are our living God. And you rule over us, Lord. Praise you. The evening dusk. Page 410. Ahavat olam v'Yisrael. Ahavat Torah mitzvot u'kim mishpatim otanu limata. Adonai Adonai Eloheinu, Eshom Elohimenu, Nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Yiheh v'chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, ve'orech yameinu. ובהם ונגד יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אלוהינו. ברוך שם כבוד רחמו, לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל לבבך, והיו הדברים אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננת לבבך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, ובשוכבך מאוד על ידיך, והיו לכותרות בעיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Page 415. But if you will faithfully obey the commandment which I command you today, page 417. 16.
ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית בכנף בתל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית. וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 418.
המעביר בניו בין גזרי ים סוף את רודפיהם ואת שונאיהם בתהומות ציבה, וראו בניו גבורתו שבכו בהודו לשמו, ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל. לכנו שירה ושמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נטר בקודש, נורא תהילו עושה מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה, זאבים אנו ואמרו אדוני אלוהינו לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 420 on the top.
ושמור צאתנו ובאנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני אחורי סוכת שלום עלינו. ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו.
Two together, the very bottom of page 421. For on this day, atonement shall be made for you, Christ. For all your sins shall be clean before the Lord. So on page 422.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וערם הדרך חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכם בימיכם, ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בהגנה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם, עולם יתברך ויתשבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילה לעילה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, ושבחתה ונחמתה, לעמירן בעלמה, ויאמרו Amen.
The silent hymn, page 5, begins on page 424. Where we only do the silent part in the evening. It's 424 through 440, and we will be picking up at 446.
424. 46.
What 24?
Yeah.
Page 446.
Ya'aleh Achanunenu Me'erev V'yavo Shabbateinu Miboker V'yehira'eh Rinunenu V'yehira'eh Rinunenu Arareh Ya'aleh koleinu me'erev v'yavot tzidkateinu miboker v'yehira'eh pidyoneinu v'yehira'eh pidyoneinu adareh Ya'aleh inuyenu me'erev v'yavo selichateinu miboker v'yehira'eh nakateinu v'yehira'eh nakateinu adoreh Ya'aleh menuseinu me'erev v'yavo lemano miboker v'yehira'eh kippureinu v'yehira'eh kippureinu adareh Ya'aleh ishenu me'erev v'yavo tehareinu miboker v'yira'eh chinuneinu adareh Ya'aleh zichronenu me'erev v'yavo v'yudeinu miboker v'yira'eh hadaratenu adareh Ya'aleh davkeinu me'erev ויבוא גילנו מבוקר, ויראה בקשתנו, ויראה בקשתנו עד הערב. יעלה אל קצנו מערב, ויבוא אליך מבוקר, ויראה אלינו, ויראה אלינו עד הערב.
We continue on the top of page 449, and thinking this room actually is pretty symmetrical in the organization, so we can do responsive reading on two sides of the room. I'm going to be biased just for the orderly fashion. So this side will always start. Sorry for left discrimination. But it's not political. Let's start with on page 449. Oh God, who hears prayer, to you shall all creatures come. They shall come and worship before you, and will not come. Come, let us worship you, our God. Let us bend the knee before the Lord. Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us proclaim the rock of our deliverance. Let us draw near to the Lord with thankfulness. Let us proclaim the Lord with songs of praise. Righteousness and justice sustain God's throne. Love and truth attend our always. The sea is God's and David, and henceforth forever. God's hand is the life of every creature, the spirit of every living. Continue on the bottom of page 448.
הנשמה לך והגוף הלך, חוסה על המלך, על המלך, חוסה על המלך, על המלך. הנשמה לך והגוף שלך, הנשמה לך והגוף שלך, אדוני יעשה למען שמך. ענו על שמך, אדוני יעשה למען שמך, בעבור כבוד שמך, כי אל חנון ורחום שמך, למען שמך אדוני, וסלחת לעווננו, כי רבו.
Page 450.
הנה כחומר ביד היוצר, ברצותו מרחיב וברצותו מקצר, כן אנחנו בידך חסד נוצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ויעלתי פן ליצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ויעלתי פן ליצר. הנה כאבן ביד המסתת, ברצותו חייס וברצותו מחטאת, כן אנחנו בידך בחיי וממותת. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר. הנה היריעה בירוקם, ברצותו מיישר וברצותו מעקם, כן אנחנו בידך אלקנו ונוקם. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר. הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף, כן אנחנו בידך ממציא למזור טרף. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית ועל תפן ליצר.
Recall your covenant, forgive our sin. In Hebrew, don't look at our sin like Yetzer. Yetzer is our drive. So God created us, the same word as create or creator, same root. But we want in our lives not to worship the Yetzer, the drive that we have, but to worship the Yotzer, the creator. It's just a very slight difference, but can make a big difference in our life. We worship our drives, our wants, or we worship the creator. That's what this poem is about. We continue on page 454, and please rise here. We're gonna be recreating the scenario when God passed over Moses, and Moses was able to see God the closest possible. So this is where we are now, closest as possible to God. And God went over him. He was in a nook in the rock, and Moses made this plea with God. God forgave us on that day. And the Talmud said it was Yom Kippur. Page 454.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו. מעביר ראשון, מעביר ראשון, ראשון, מרבה מחילה לחטאים, עושה סליחה לפושעים, עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, לא חרתם תגמול. אל הורית לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שהודעת לענב מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמם, ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור Adonai al panav vayikra. Adonai, Adonai, Erev Hamayim, Chesed ve'emet, Noseh chesed la'alamim, Noseh yavon v'chesha v'chata v'na'eh. Adonai, Adonai, Elohim Echad, Erev Hamayim, Chesed ve'emet, Noseh chesed la'alamim, Noseh yavon v'chesha v'chata v'na'eh. Adonai, Adonai, Elohim Echad, Erev Hamayim, Chesed ve'emet, Noseh chesed la'alamim, Noseh yavon v'chesha v'chata v'na'eh. וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, וחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני כה וסלח, תרב חסד לכל אחד.
Let's read together the 4 lines on the bottom of page 455. Forgive us our Lord, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our Sovereign, for we have transgressed. For you, O Lord, have generous and free. Great is your love for all who call upon you. We continue on page 458.
Shema koleinu, Adonai Eloheinu, chuz v'rachem, rachem aleinu, v'kabel b'rachamim u'ratzon, v'kabel b'rachamim, ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו. השיבנו, השיבנו, אדוני אליך ונשובה. חדש ימינו בקדם. אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ברוח קדשך, ברוח קדשך אל תיקח ממנו. אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, כי כלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו. אל תעזבנו אדוני אלוהינו, תרחק ממנו.
Let's read the bottom part of the page on page 459, responsively in English. Our God and God of our ancestors, do not abandon or forsake us. Do not shame us. Do not break your covenant with us. Bring us close to your Torah. Teach us your commandments. Show us your ways. Incline our hearts to your ear. Purify our hearts so that we return to you sincerely and wholeheartedly. Forgive your word. For the sake of the Lord, pardon my sin, that they would be erased. Page 460.
Eloheinu Elohei Avotzeinu, Silach lanu, Michalanu, Aper lanu, Ki anu amecha, Be'ata Eloheinu, Anu amecha, Be'ata Adinu, Anu amecha, Be'ata Adonenu, Anu yalecha, Be'ata Helkeinu, Anu amecha, Be'ata Goraleinu, Anu zonecha, Be'ata Roleinu, Anu zarecha, Be'ata Notreinu, Anu be'uladecha, Be'ata Yotreinu, Anu baretecha, Be'ata Rodeinu, Anu seguladecha, Be'ata Geroleinu, Anu amecha, Be'ata Malkeinu, Anu amecha, Be'ata Malkeinu, Anu azechonim be'ata rachum b'chanun, Anu kishay oref atarech apayim, Anu mlei avon v'yata malei rachamim, Anu yamenu kitzel over, v'yata ushnotecha lo yitanu.
Page 462.
Eloheinu, Elohei Avotzeinu, Tavo lefanecha tefilateinu, ve'al titalam et techinateinu, she'ein anachnu azeifonim she'oref lama lefanecha, Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotzeinu, tzadikim anachnu, ve'lo chatanu, aval anachnu chatanu. Ay, ay, ay. Avinu Pashanu Zararenu Kishinu Ore Rashanu Shihatnu Tianu Tainu Titanu Sahatecha Onishpatecha Toligalo Shabalanu Ata Tzadik Al Kol Habaleinu Ki Emet Asita Vanachnu Hishanu.
You may be seated. Okay, we continue on page 464.
Eloheinu Elohei Avotzeinu Silach u'mechal avonotzeinu B'yom HaKippurim hazeh Ve'ater lanu b'tefilatzeinu V'cheir ya'er b'sho'einu mineged einecha V'chok et yitzereinu l'ishtabed lach Na'areteinu lashub elecha v'chadesh kilyoteinu l'shemor pekudecha Umot et levaveinu le'avol yira et shemecha kachatu b'toratecha Umot Adonai Elohecha et levav ליעבוד את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך למען חייך. מה נאמר לפניך יושבי מרום, ומה נספר לפניך שוכן שחקים, הלא הנסתרות בנגלות אתה יודע רזי עולם בתעלומות סתרי חוכי, אתה חופש כל חדרי בטן ובכן כליות בלב, אין דבר נעלה ממך ואין נסתר מנגד עיניך. ובכן יראתם לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתסלח לנו את כל חטאותינו ותמחה לנו על כל עוונותינו ונכפר לנו על כל פשעינו.
Please rise for Al-Khair, page 466. We'll do the same format throughout the holiday. The first paragraph in Hebrew, the middle paragraph in English, and the bottom paragraph in Hebrew again.
על החטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, והחטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטול שפתיים, על החטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי וסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהרהור הלב, ועל החטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי פה, ועל החטא שחטאנו לפניך בזדון ובשגגה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחילול השם ועל כולם אלוהי סליחו סלח לנו
We have sinned against you by foolish heart, and we have sinned against you knowingly and unknowingly. We have sinned against you by bribery. We have sinned against you by slander. We have sinned against you in eating and drinking. We have sinned against you by false pride. For all these sins of God are forgiveness. Forgive us, pardon us, and us alone.
ועל כולם אלוהי סליחו סלח לנו מחל לנו כפרנו. על החטא שחטאנו לפניך בסיפור עין, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפרי הידור, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחשות עורף, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתימהון לבב. ועל כולם אלוהי סליחו סלח לנו מחל לנו
Before we almost finish for tonight, at least the prayer part, we'll open the ark, and on page 472, we refer to God as Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our God. And, we ask that before our decree, our verdict is signed and sealed, we want to plead with God to forgive us. And, I think this year everybody has good circumstantial circumstances. So if you want to plead with God and say, especially this, forgive me, it was out of my hands, out of my control. Page 472.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatan Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Eilanu Melech El Ata. Avinu Malkeinu, Achazirenu B'teshuva Shleima Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadei Shaleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu Shelach Ufua Shaleima L'cholei Amecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Hafer Atzat Oyeveinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Zachreinu B'zichron Tov Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chateveinu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chateveinu B'Sefer Gula Yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu, Chateveinu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalkala. Avinu Malkeinu, Chateveinu B'Sefer Zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu, Chateveinu B'Sefer Selicha U'Mechila. Avinu Malkeinu, Hatzemach Lanu Yeshua B'Karo. Avinu Malkeinu, Aharim Keren Yisrael Amecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kodeinu, Chus V'Rachem Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kabel Rachamim V'Ratzon, Et Tfilateinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Hamon Aleinu V'Yakol Aleinu V'Tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Leman Eva Eish V'Mayim Al Kiddush Shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh Lemanecha, Imlo Lemaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu Aleinu. Yeh banu masih, Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu Aleinu. Yeh banu masih, Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'oshienu.
You want to remain standing for the Kaddish on page 476, that will be followed by the Aleinu Shabbat. Page 476.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabba. Yahalma hadivrach yudutei v'mochmachutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayechon be'Yisrael v'agala v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Shemei Rabba le'olam u'olam e'omaya. Yitrach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitmaseh v'yitzadach Darby, it's a Levi, it's a Loshemedi Kudisha, Le'ela Mikover Chata B'Shirata, Dushbechata V'Nechemata, Damiram Alma V'imeru, Yisrael Tzlo, Tonovoton, D'chol Yisrael, Kadam V'Vondi B'Shmaya V'imeru, Yeshmur Rabba Mishmaya V'Chaim Aleinu, Al Kol Yisrael V'imeru, Oseh Shalom B'Bromah, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imeru.
Aleinu l'Shabbat, page 478. Aleinu l'Shabbat, Adon HaKol, Lateinu La'aretz Shelo asanu k'nei ha'atzot, ve'lo asanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo asanu k'nei ve'lo aleinu k'chol ha'olam, ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachvim u'modim l'ifnei Melech Malachei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, she'olot hashamayim v'yosei haaretz, u'moshe v'karov hashamayim yi'ad, u'shkinatu zot b'damei merochim, u'Eloheinu Eino, Emet Malkeinu Emet Zulato, HaKatuv b'Torato, V'yadata Yom v'Hashivota Elevarecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, Hashamayim Imad, Ve'haaretz Page 480. If you're saying Kaddish, please remain standing on page 482. You can use this as the Kaddish of the year if you're not here all year. It's an opportunity if you want to take a mini Yizkor. We'll have the big Yizkor tomorrow, but if you just want to use this opportunity, you can. Page 482. Yikedan v'yisadan shemei rabban, v'alma v'yirat v'etzei v'yamlich malchutei, v'charechon u'b'yomechon u'b'chayei v'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'b'zman karev v'imru amen. Hei shmei rabban v'torah le'olam v'le'olam. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתחזר ויתחזר ויתברך שמי קדושה בריאות לעילם לעילם כל ברכתה ושבחה תושבחתה וזכרתה ואמרם ואמר ואמרו אמן יהא שלמה רמה מי שנורא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ונאמר, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Cantor Philip, for beautiful davening. This is my, the latest format is to speak at the end. Not to hold you from your praying hard. So figure we'll keep the praying for praying and then the teaching or conversation for conversation. One of the things I was wondering all year, actually, this year, is how can the Jewish people can really stand up this year and say, Avinu Malkeinu, you are our God, you are the king, but we are your family. All the other nations somehow are not God's family. This year, even if we had the notion that somehow the Jewish people somehow different, I would say we were all influenced exactly the same thing, the same way. So first of all, I thought to maybe just give you a couple of the sources of how rabbis even got to that magnificent prayer of Avinu Malkeinu. It's very interesting that some of our liturgy was developed by ancient, what we say the Great Assembly, but some piyutim, some song entered our liturgy from almost an unknown source and became canonized in our prayer. So Avinu Malkeinu is one of those examples, maybe even the best example. So first of all, the word our Father, where do we even get the notion that God is somehow our Father? So actually the first verse that we see in the Torah that somehow indicates that we have preferential treatment somehow is when in the story of Egypt, when Moses stands in front of Pharaoh, and God tells God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh, God, that Israel is my son, let my people go, right? That's the same spirit of that. Let my people go, because my people, the Israelites, are my son. I'm sorry for the not having gender neutrality here, but it's my son, and I have to say it in Hebrew, I can't say it in English because the rest of my explanation will try to understand the word in Hebrew. Bechori, B'ni Bechori. So the first time we hear this concept that somehow we have this familial relationship with God is when Moses tells Pharaoh, I have a message for you from God. Let my people go. Israel is my son. My Bechori is first son, normally, or firstborn. That's how we normally translate it. But actually, this is exactly how we are, what I'm trying to explain next, because just reading it as firstborn is very limiting, and it's really not what is exactly referred to. The idea that we are a bechor, a firstborn, even if we translated that, but the bechori is the same name and the same term that is used for birthright. When Jacob buys the birthright from Esau, his older brother, first of all, just the fact that he can buy it from him, it means that he can't just refer to the who technically came out first. Because if you can buy it, right? So he buys the Bechorah from him. So when God says, B'ni Bechori, Israel is my firstborn, or Bechor somehow, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are the most ancient people, or we were the first. I think maybe the Chinese preceded us, and it's interesting at a certain point, we were the same number. So you can imagine having 1.5 billion Jews. So, we'll have to have mainly on Zoom. So then I want to take it a step further. And how do we get the idea? So we've established that somehow God refers to us as in terms of family relation. But now let's take it further. Where do we refer to in the Bible to God as our Father? And it comes from Isaiah, and it says, "Surely you are our Father, though Abraham regarded us not, and Israel recognizes not." So we refer to God in Isaiah as a Father. So we have the Father, and then the King comes from a different source. It comes from Isaiah, a different place in Isaiah, and it says, "Is our judge the Lord, is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he will save us." So all these terminologies that we use usually around the liturgy in general, and specifically for the high holiday, of course, is taken from redemptive language, because we want to have good news, for people, hope, as we call it, is the hope. So our King, our Father, our King, really puts us very close to God, in that sense that we feel special. So, but then we have this year that everybody was affected the same way. How can we still say that God gives preferential treatment? So I actually don't know exactly how God treats Israel separately, but I want to tell you a personal experience, an experience that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, not in time and not in place. When I was growing up in Israel, and this is still the case in the state of Israel today, that on Yom Kippur, it doesn't matter what affiliation you have to Judaism, and actually people who even are not Jewish, the citizens of Israel, non-Jewish citizens of Israel, respect that as well. I don't know if you ever had that experience, to be in Israel on Yom Kippur, when everything shuts down and nobody drives. Imagine the streets are clear. People walk in the middle of the streets. Think about walking in the middle of Fifth Avenue. And then this is how I spent my first 2 decades of my life. And then when I came to New York, living right in Midtown, and coming back from synagogue, walking through Fifth Avenue, and it's just a regular Thursday. Nobody really, you didn't know. But in Israel, even if an alien will look through the heavens, they'll see that something in this little piece of land, they can find it. That piece of land, everybody shuts down for that one day. That is just unbelievable experience. Now, I grew up in a family that normally, the way I describe it is we were secular during the week and religious on Shabbat. So we grew up in a very secular environment, but on Yom Kippur, we were not allowed to ride our bicycle like everybody else. All my classmates, all my friends this was the big day to ride the bike. You could ride, the streets are open. It's amazing. And I yearned for this experience. And my father said, "No, you can't do that." And one year, the peer pressure was too strong. And one of my friends said, "I'm going to meet another friend. You want to come with us? Come with me." And I sneaked to this bicycle, or snuck the bicycle, out of the basement, and I went with my friend. On the way back, I flipped like no flipping. Somehow we were riding on the sidewalk, but somehow I hit a hole in the sidewalk, the size of Montana. And I flew, and I landed, and I really, part of my thigh was ripped, and I had to walk to the hospital. No ambulance, no cell phone. I had to walk to the hospital. But God summoned me, a nurse who's walking that way, and we were in the neighborhood where the hospital was. So it was unbelievable. The night before, I asked my father, when we were walking to synagogue, and at that point, I don't know if I was already plotting, or not, but I asked him, tell me why we can't use the bicycle on the holiday. So he actually, my father's very learned in Jewish law, and he said, it's not that you can't ride it, it's a matter if it breaks, and then you need to fix it. And here I am, so far from home, we're like, 20 minutes ride from home, and my bicycle now is literally broken to half. It's broken to half. My brother had to come back later and pick it up, and my friend just pushed it in the bushes. And I walked with the nurse and this other guy who went to visit somebody to the hospital. They were literally carrying me for like 2 miles into the hospital. When they were sewing me, I was like, I didn't even cry because I felt so guilty. But I can't cry, And I couldn't even, I horrified to call my parents, but I had to do that. I'm calling from the hospital. And just that one night before, I asked my father, he gave me an answer. And the next thing you know, I'm calling him from a hospital because I took my bicycle against his will. So why am I telling you all of this? Because that is the experience of Yom Kippur in the Jewish state. 3,500 years later, after this text was written and given to us, we honor it in a way that nobody in the world honors time and space. So you tell me if we're still special. I think we are. It doesn't mean that we're better in everything, that we're somehow superior. But in the relationship with God, the father-child or the parent-child, we are the first one. Again, not chronologically, but we honor God or honor the relationship to the commandment in a way that even if we're talking about superficially, that it seems like people are not affiliated with synagogue, people are not, but Yom Kippur comes and we're all there. Not just there physically, but to not drive, that takes sacrifice. So we seem unorganized. Now I'll repeat my famous line. When people come to me and say, Rabbi, always, Rabbi, I'm a Jew, but I don't like organized religion. And I say to them, don't worry, you're not that organized. So it seems that on the surface, we're not organized, but there's something in our heart that is only for us. So I hope you'll embrace it. Because if you don't embrace it, our environment always has a way to remind you. So I hope that we'll embrace it. And yes, even if everybody experiences the same thing on the surface, you can always have a different relationship deep down. So I hope that God will open the gates of heaven for us, and the next 24 hours we'll be able to inject as much as possible our sorry apologies, and so God turns our, as we said, our sins, not only forgive our debts, but actually matches it and gives us credit. Amen. We conclude with page 486. Yigdal Elohim Chai.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא בעת אל מציאותו, אחד ויחיד כייחודו, לעולם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, תלמוד דמות הגוף ואין הגוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, אדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון בראשית וראשיתו. הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורד גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, ידע סגולתו בתפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומעביד את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמואל, היה נביאו למען ביתו, לא יכל להתפאר ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו. צופה ויודע סתרים לו, מביא לסוף דבר בקדמתו. גומר איש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרישתו. נשבר לבית ימין ושיר החיות, לבדוק מחכה את ישועתו. מתים מחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין שם תהילתו. מתים מחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין שם תהילתו.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9:30.